So good morning, everyone. I see people are still joining, but it's 9:02, so I think maybe we should kick it off and people can still join as we begin. I see that Jadwiga is with us, so that's I think and all the speakers are present as well. So yes, I wanted to welcome you to this webinar series by the ESMAP Clean Cooking Fund, where we are highlighting knowledge and experiences from experts on closing the clean cooking gap. My name is Besnik Husseini. I'm a co-lead for the Clean Cooking Fund, and I'll be moderating today's session. Today we'll be discussing how to operationalize and scale electric cooking interventions, and we have quite a rich panel of invited experts that will be discussing from their own experiences. But before that, if Jadwiga is ready, I'd like to invite her. Jadwiga Simikolenova is our Energy Practice Manager for Eastern and Southern Africa here at the World Bank. So we'll invite her to give some opening remarks before the speakers come in. And then I'll introduce the speakers in turn. Jadwiga, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Besnik, and welcome everybody to the webinar on operationalizing and scaling up cooking interventions. As Besnik said, I'm Jadwiga Semikolenova. I'm Energy Practice Manager covering Eastern and Southern Africa. And welcome everybody again, and very, very excited to see so many people connected to discuss this interesting topic. Clean cooking actually is very important because at the end of the day, cooking takes a lot of energy from all of us, and it's a big part of energy demand. And yet, if you talk to people, on the streets, what we mean by clean access, everybody will say, well, actually, it's access to electricity. And everybody thinks about clean cooking as a little bit as an afterthought, which to me was always surprising because at the end of the day, cooking takes so much time and cooking has such a huge impact on everybody's health. And if cooking is not clean and used fossil-based products, it affects climate, it affects carbonization, it affects deforestation in a lot of countries, and it disproportionately affects women and children. And if you look at numbers and see that 2.1 billion, over actually 2 billion people in the world still require access to clean cooking, it's actually mind-blowing that when we talk about access, we only focus on actually connection to electricity rather than what directly affects everyday life of a lot of people. So when Mission 300 can somebody mute, please? So when Mission 300 was launched in April 2024, it was very important for all of the people part of these initiatives, like sub-African countries, development partners like ourselves and African Development Bank and Rockefeller Foundation, to make sure that clean cooking solution is explicitly included among targets of Mission 300. And we keep emphasizing that when we talk about connecting 300 million Africans to electricity, we don't just talk about electricity connection, we also talk about clean cooking. And that's why I'm very excited about today's webinar and welcome a Modern Energy Clean Cooking Services program from Loughborough University, where we'll examine different models of scaling up e-cooking solutions on a national scale. And big shout out, of course, to ESMAP and Clean Cooking Program that has been championing clean cooking solutions for many, many years, even way, way before clean cooking became mainstream. And very big thanks to Besnik to organizing this webinar and bringing everybody together. So, from a lot of people like me who have been in this business for a while, you remember that when we started talking about e-cooking some years ago, the big question was, will it work and will it be affordable? Now, fast forward several years, and we're not talking about whether it's going to work and whether it's affordable. We're talking about how to scale up and making sure that the solutions become nationwide accessible. And I think this is a huge, huge milestone to think about, that clean cooking is not, and electric cooking is not like a pie in the sky anymore. It's actually quite reachable solution to a lot of countries and will provide solution to sub-Saharan Africa. In South Africa, where I'm located, electric cooking is quite widespread. And actually, a lot of people disconnect their stoves from ESCOM because of load shedding and connect to small solar panels to cook with electricity. In Namibia, electric cooking is very, very widespread. So you could see the solutions are actually moving at least to low middle income countries and middle income countries. And what I'm excited to discuss today is to show how in other countries, like in Uganda, electric cooking also becomes more and more of a acceptable everyday solution. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today. To see how different business models, different technologies could be adopted to and adapted to different countries' needs, and to basically brainstorm how different pieces of puzzle could come together, like the regulators, governments, business sector, development partners, and consumers to mainstream and scale up electric cooking. And with this, Vesnik, to you.
Thank you so much, Jadwiga. Those are some great remarks. So without losing any more time, I'd like to invite Professor Ed Brown, who's the director of the Modern Energy Cooking Services program at Loughborough University, and he will give us some context to electric cooking before we dive deeper into the other technical areas of the subject. Ed, I think you can go ahead and start.
Many thanks, Besnik. Can I just check? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for the introduction. Jadwiga, music to my ears hearing your introduction to this. I think a kind of very similar experience when we began working on these issues back in 2018, indeed a few years earlier than that. Frequently the response that we got to our work on electric cooking was I guess incredulity, if not laughter. Am I still sharing my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. To introduce the Modern Energy Cooking Services program, we are a collaboration between Loughborough University in the UK, ESMAP, and most recently with CLASP, an American NGO that have joined us recently in expanding the reach of the program somewhat. And really what we set out to do back in 2018 was precisely what Jadwiga was talking about, to explore why clean cooking had been left out of the kind of I guess array of issues and techniques that the international community were engaging with. If you looked at the record of delivering clean cooking to populations across Africa and Asia, it was barely keeping up with population growth. And so the chief question that we wanted to begin addressing was, why is that the case? Why is clean cooking the poor neighbor, as it were, of for example, access to electricity? And so we began by looking into the factors that had led to this situation, and then focusing specifically on what the drivers and pathways were in order to accelerate transition to modern energy cooking services. And by that, we were looking not only at electricity, which I'll talk a lot more about over the coming minutes, but also at LPG, at ethanol, at biogas, at basically all of those higher tier alternatives. And whilst we've done quite a lot of work on those other areas, it was electric cooking that we came to see as being the area that had the most fruitful possibilities of scale, not least because of the type of infrastructural expenditure that was available to support the expansion of these types of solutions. So over the years since 2018, we've conducted a significant range of research activity, ranging from the analysis I was talking about in terms of the why we are in the situation that we're in, through a whole range of different types of analyses. And we looked at the efficiency of appliances and the introduction of a wide range of new, much more efficient appliances that mean that cooking with electricity is actually far more affordable than people had previously thought. We did a lot of economic modelling of that affordability. For instance, we produced this definitive report really on the cost perspective of cooking with electricity a number of years back. And then over recent years, we've been ground truthing that work in lots of individual locations by focusing on the needs and demands of consumers, the desirability of electric cooking as a solution, and so on and so forth. And then we've also looked at issues to do with how we can draw more finance into the sector. Obviously, through the CCF, there's been a focus on RBF programs and so on. But one of the things we're working on together at the moment is a whole range of innovations within impact finance, both carbon methodologies and a range of other alternative ways of drawing resources into the sector. And that's led to a series of programs where the fruits of this research have been delivered in partnership with a range of different organizations, where we're beginning to see significant programs demonstrating sustained uptake, job creation, and a whole host of other components. So we are indeed at a situation where, unlike a few years ago, where electricity for cooking was seen as I'm sorry, I'm trying to move my, there we go, was seen as something of a pipe dream, to where it is now very much part of the mainstream and scaling very rapidly. The Global Electric Cooking Coalition was formed in 2023 and launched at COP. It now has 36 members that draw together countries and major international institutions. There's an increasing amount of dedicated finance being made available for electric cooking. Just in the last year alone, the African Development Bank has invested around 15 million in funding electric cooking initiatives across 3 East African countries, and that number is set to grow considerably more over the next year. There have been a number of large carbon deals, the most significant of which is the World Bank bond that's been reached with Ghana as part of its Article 6 program, which will see around 250,000 electric appliances delivered via the company Up Energy over the course of the coming couple of years. We've also seen the beginnings of local manufacture in India and the beginnings of it in Africa as well. And a number of countries are now promoting and pursuing national electric cooking strategies on a number of different lines. What does this look like in practice? Well, I think that the first thing is that obviously the lowest hanging fruit, as we might say, is on grid connected e-cooking. We have an increasing number of utilities across Africa that are recognizing the role of electric cooking in demand creation amongst their existing customer base. And then on top of that, we can see Mission 300 as really an incredible opportunity to embed electric cooking as a key component in ensuring that consumer demand is there as part of last mile connectivity. Certainly from the work we've done with utilities across Africa over recent years, one of their biggest concerns is how to match significant expansion of grids with the consumption that is needed from those new customers that are coming on board. And the opportunities for electric cooking to play a significant role within that consumption is something that we've been finding increasingly grasped and pursued by the utilities and regulators that we work with. And so, for example, in a number of countries, we're working on national strategies that are drawing in the utilities and indeed in some cases the regulators increasingly. So what kind of policy components are we talking about in relation to grid connected e-cooking? Later on today, you're going to hear from our Tanzanian colleagues around on-bill financing. And this is a program that TANESCO have only recently, in the last few months, launched looking in this case at a way of, instead of paying the full cost of electric cooking appliances up front, customers repay gradually through their electricity bills, and in this case with 25% of every prepaid electricity purchase automatically allocated towards repaying the appliance. At the moment, this work is on those customers on the normal domestic tariff, and I understand that in the next phase there's an intent to expand to other tariffs, including the lifeline tariff. And one of the issues we may want to explore on that is in terms of what is the feasibility of electric cooking within the limits of lifeline tariffs, and certainly with the efficiency of electric appliances that we're talking about. Certainly the research that we've done is suggesting that actually the limits in the amount of electricity that is used by the most efficient appliances mean that you could do a considerable part of daily cooking via electricity without getting close to the lifeline tariff limit. But again, that's something that will be different in different countries with different lifeline tariffs. So that it brings us on to one of the other big issues. I currently have a PhD student working with me on dedicated e-cooking tariffs. In the case of Kenya, there already is a dedicated e-cooking tariff in Uganda, and there are some really interesting discussions ongoing at the moment around innovative use of time of day tariffs. There's also a big push towards institutional e-cooking because of the opportunities that gives for significant loads to be added to the grid, and it's also quite often funded through other mechanisms in terms of the guaranteeing of school feeding initiatives and so on. So there's a great opportunity to draw in collaborative engagements with other sectors. Bulk purchasing as a way of driving down cost. That's a project that we're currently exploring sort of external to individual countries through a project that we're calling SAMPA. But there are also opportunities for utilities themselves to invest in bulk purchasing facilities, and also for countries to see this as an important part of their carbon strategy because of the very high quality credits that can come from using IoT connected appliances, which are emerging in many markets at the moment. In addition, the types of national strategies that we are developing involve considerable work around issues such as national appliance standards, the development of repair and maintenance systems, national awareness raising campaigns, and also, as we're going to hear a lot about, I think in the next part of today's presentations, around how we can model a growing demand for electricity within the scenarios that are in use by energy ministries and so on. However, one thing that's really important is that we also grasp the fact that Mission 300 is being delivered not only through grid extension, but also through DRE. And we have a considerable program of activity that also explores the role of electric cooking and its feasibility within the context of DRE. The most obvious way that we've done this is through looking at mini grids. So our recently completed Cosmo program looked at business models in 7 companies that were developing mini grids that were incorporating e-cooking loads. We're currently working with AFD in Madagascar on incorporation of e-cooking loads into a very large mini grid program that they're developing there. But the evidence that we have from the Cosmo project is that for the 7 companies and the business models that we were looking at through that program, I think the biggest impact was whilst adopting business models that incorporated electric cooking involve a greater level of upfront investment. The returns on that investment were beginning to be secured much more rapidly from those mini grid operators. So that's I guess the big take home from the work we've been doing with mini grid companies, that particularly if you incorporate those loadings from the start, then there is a real opportunity to add to the commercial viability of mini grids through the inclusion of e-cooking loads where they are feasible and appropriate. We've also done work on standalone solar through work that we've done on solar engines, as it were. Our STARS program recently is focusing on standalone and rooftop programs, and we've done an amount of work working with local organizations, for example, in Malawi, working with women's cooperatives that have been looking at the synergies between direct solar for irrigation and for solar e-cooking, and where that's been done using DC EPCs, which has been really successful, but also where there has been an upgrade option that's drawing in the use of lithium titanate batteries, which is a really interesting innovation within that particular context. So that's really where we are. All I've done is given you a very kind of quick overview of the types of work that we've been doing on e-cooking. I think the key takeaway is that in whatever we do, we should not be financing energy access initiatives in this day and age without taking into account the opportunities for electric cooking to be a key component of consumption. And we should be modelling these opportunities as a matter of course in terms of the work that we do in modelling our future energy systems and the demand that those energy systems are going to enjoy. But that is where I hand over to my colleague Matt, who's been leading most of our work in that area. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ed. Could you stop sharing and I'll share my slides? Thank you. Besnick, do you want me just to carry straight on through?
Yeah, I think you can go ahead, Matt, if you're ready.
Tremendous. Well, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Leach, and I'm part of the senior management team at MECS, supporting Ed and Simon Batchelor, our research director. And as has been said, I take a bit of a lead for modelling within the programme. So my ambitions for the next few minutes is to do these things here. So I've got a few minutes to speak about planning for electric cooking and the associated tools that are used for that. It's a very wide field and it can be quite specialist. And I know we've got quite a broad audience. So I'm simply trying here to set out the range of approaches and the key sources of information, particularly for those who want to learn more and to pick up on it later. Just the word modelling can put a lot of people off, but it's little more than trying to simplify a complex situation into a form that mere mortals can get their heads around to explore the implications of different choices. You may well hear the word optimization and increasingly the role of AI, and it's easy to feel that there is some dark magic at play which can arrive at an ideal solution to the questions that you're posing. But in most cases, these models are simply channeling the preferences and the constraints that we as the users of the models are asked to impose or find we have to impose. And these are really tools to help us think through those things and then to present the implications of them. It would seem ideal too if we could have one tool that allows us to explore such things for maybe for the whole of a country, for example. One example being maybe asking what the best combination of clean cooking solutions would be for Tanzania or for Uganda. In practice, there are so many different levels to that question that we tend to use a variety of tools, from using detailed cooking diaries at household level to assess the relative costs of e-cook compared to charcoal for that particular place's cuisine, up to national energy planning, where the question is simply how much electricity or charcoal would be consumed by the totality of all the households, as those numbers will be combined with many other forms of sectoral demand. Of course, all these different levels can be connected through simplifications, and there's a lot of activity now on such integrated modelling, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes. There's also, though, much attention to another set of approaches called GIS, Geographic Information System, which can include a lot of detail about a place, for example, that region's cooking practices or given their particular cuisines, but then replicate that thousands of times for every such region within a country, for example. But that approach will be really constrained by needing matching data on cuisine and cooking practices and many other factors for every location in the country. So unless we have very comprehensive data sets, we are back to needing simplifications as we scale up the modelling. Now, reflecting a few of these thoughts in a picture. So Bottom-up models can get into details of what is cooked and how, what stoves, what local energy sources are available. And we can do a lot with that. For example, to compare options, design financing, and plan pilots. So these are around bottom-up models of cooking itself. But very quickly, I think we should be looking also at energy access, as cooking choices are affected by the local electricity access. And energy access improvements are affected by the potential demand for cooking fuels. So there is a lot of attention to integrating cooking into electricity access modelling, while trying to preserve as much detail as possible about how conditions and preferences for cooking vary by place. And then stepping up to link to the overall national electricity and then energy system modelling, opportunities for improving people's lives and economic development through electricity access and clean cooking should feature in policy decisions and planning, financing, and attention to the range of energy sources for a country. Similarly, national priorities, for example, for decarbonisation levels, should flow back down and influence that pace of electricity and clean cooking access. And finally, to complete this picture, the energy system is just one part of a national economy, and similar two-way interaction should take place right up at that highest level between the macroeconomy and those energy system considerations. So lots of different levels, all of which have different approaches that you might take to modelling them. So just to give a few examples of some of the tools available. So at that most detailed level, MECS recently launched the Implications Model for Cooking, TIMEC, and there's just a kind of outline illustration of that on the screen now. And this operates right at that right-hand side of the previous chart to understand, what people are cooking, their cooking profiles, what kind of fuels they use, the details of the devices, and you can really get into a lot of detail there. But it is also nicely set up to explore both those cooking needs and options for one household, but also to aggregate those up for tens of households or even thousands of households. So it's a great tool for taking detailed data into initial scenario analysis to help explore transitions. I talked about the GIS approach, and a very well-known example of that is OnStove. For any one location, you can include pretty detailed data on cooking needs, fuel, and stove options. Not as detailed as you could into TIMEC, but fairly detailed. And it will then calculate for you, for that place, the resulting social, economic, and environmental impacts of different choices you might take, whether it's e-cooking or LPG or your baseline of perhaps charcoal. By specifying your preferences across the different impacts for that place, you can then identify what might be the best cooking solution for that place. If you can then replicate those data for every location, in this case, sub-Saharan Africa, you can generate a map of that best choice, as on this slide. And in this case, it's showing the highest net social benefit choices across sub-Saharan Africa. Now, more recent work and ongoing work is about linking this kind of GIS for this kind of bottom-up OnStove approach to an electricity access modelling tool, one example being OnStet. And you can then iterate on how this distribution of cooking types would change as electricity access improves, and see how electricity access investments can be supported, for example, by more electric cooking, so that kind of demand enhancement. Now, another category of modelling is focused on the social, economic and environmental impacts of clean cooking choices specifically. The previous slide around OnStove mentioned the calculation of impacts of that sort in its results. But this is a very complex area, and it very much depends on the conditions within the particular place that you're studying, and dedicated tools are more comprehensive and more accurate. The WHO's BARHAP tool is the best known, and there's an illustration of that on the screen. It includes national data for most low and middle income countries, describing, for example, the people in the households, the current share of 12 different cooking types, fuel prices, but also socio-demographic features such as current population health, the time that people spend cooking, the fuel mix and electricity mix, for example. And then what happens is the user selects one or more cooking transitions represented by the arrows in the diagram on the screen, and the level of uptake of each of those over a specified time period, both within a household to represent fuel stacking and household numbers transitioning. And the user also chooses which policy measures to implement, mainly sharing the cost of capital investment or running costs across different stakeholder types. And the results then lead to a number of outputs. For this particular example, which was modelling the potential impacts of uptake of 40% for 40% uptake of grid-connected charcoal users moving to electric cooking, which is something like 0.7 million households in Kenya. What we see from the results of BARHAP is a set of physical impacts, so the costs allocated to household, government and financiers, the impacts on health in terms of dailies avoided, emissions, reductions in unsustainable wood harvest, and so on. So those are all in the physical units, and then BARHAP also monetizes those. The set of monetized costs and benefits are brought together and summed to a net social benefit of the transition. On the chart here, items above the x-axis are benefits and those below are costs. So in this case, this particular transition being modelled, health benefits, social benefits from avoided time spent cooking, and climate mitigation are all very significant benefits above the line. And by far the largest benefit, though, comes from reduced fuel expenditures by households. And the overall result, as the chart kind of illustrates, is a highly positive net social benefit of this particular transition from charcoal to electric cooking. As we move to scaled clean cooking, which I think is really the interest of this session, we're talking about integrating cooking into national energy planning. That's really essential to be clear about. This chart is an example from the work done by CCG and others supporting Kenya's clean cooking and e-cooking strategies. At its heart is an energy system model, in this case osmosis, which brings in the demands for electricity from different sectors, including cooking, and uses those to explore different choices for expansion of the electricity and related energy system, calculating a range of impacts and constrained in its choices by national policies, which help define the scenarios to be explored. And these example results on the screen now show the mix of cooking transitions in different scenarios modelled in that particular piece of work, with business as usual at the top, setting continued use of biomass, but the potential for major shifts to electricity for cooking in the medium and long term. And the point of showing these results is not the detail of them, but it's to illustrate that such modelling isn't really about the tool telling you what the best plan would be. Scenarios need to be defined by the user. In this case, the high electrification is defined as a requirement by the user for maybe the 2050 period, and the model then works out the best way to deliver that, particularly in terms of a gradual fuel substitution, and it reports on the costs and benefits of the scenario. So these really are tools to support our thinking about decisions. They're not decision-making tools in their own right. Now, no discussion of modelling is complete without mention of data. And I've already highlighted that the detail of modelling is constrained in some ways to what we have data for, or what we can sensibly assume or estimate. There are now many open sources of data associated with clean cooking and as well as electricity access. And some of those are combined with specific modelling platforms. And the bank itself is very significant in this space. And the table on the screen is showing across electricity access, clean cooking only, and also the kind of the joint electricity and clean cooking space, a number of the big platforms which are offering data and sources of evidence and information. I hope you'll explore some of those after the session. So my final slide, just to wrap up, there are tools for every need. And there are growing efforts to integrate those so we can address more complex questions and perhaps use fewer tools in our endeavours. Many of those tools are open source, and so they're accessible to everybody. But I would caution that the more integrated tools can become complex, so you may well find that you need resourcing to make use of them. Overall, I would always encourage anybody contemplating modelling to think very hard about the questions you want to answer before plumping for a particular tool or approach to try to research the questions. Here are a few common areas of interest and some starting point suggestions for tools you might consider. So demand and scenario analysis of clean cooking for specific user types or for specific large segments. Have a think about the TIMEC tool that MECS is now putting forwards. But if you're interested in more detailed analysis about how things vary by location, that's a natural area for GIS-based tools where OnStove is very powerful. If you're particularly exploring impact analysis of clean cooking, perhaps you're trying to convince your energy ministry or your finance ministry that transition to electric cooking is important, BarHab might well be a useful tool. And in the whole area of integrated clean cooking plus energy or electricity access, there are several tools. I've shown an example of CCG and osmosis. SE for All are highly active in this space, as are ESMAP and the bank, with, I think, some enhanced tools to follow in the next few months. But I would highlight that you're likely to need some specialist support. Now, next, I think we're going to hear from some national experience for e-cook development in Tanzania and Uganda. Some of the tools I've mentioned have been relevant in securing interest in e-cooking as a cost competitive and cleaner option in those places and for development of specific pilots. Integrated modelling then becomes essential as you move to scale, for example, for policy and regulatory alignment and investment planning, as you will hear in a few minutes. Thanks, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Matt. That's a very thorough introduction to planning and modeling. And you can see, that these tools are available to policymakers and practitioners. And, they tackle different aspects of, energy system models, tracking of co-benefits, economic impact assessment, and so on. So this modeling can really support, like scenario analysis to help you make optimal choices in energy planning for e-cooking. And also thanks to Ed before that for giving us some context on the building blocks of e-cooking and the importance of integration of that into the different electricity access architectures. Next, we'd like to invite Irene Goel, who is the Director of Communications and Corporate Affairs at the Tanzanian utility TANESCO, who will outline some of TANESCO's pathway for scaling electric cooking in Tanzania. So now we'd like to invite Irene to begin her presentation. Thanks very much. Irene, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in this webinar. My name is Irene Goele. I'm a Director of Communication and Corporate Affairs from Tanzania Electricity Supply Company Limited. And I would like to share our experience in terms of the modeling and the cooking adoptions of e-cooking in Tanzania. First of all, I would like to explain to you about TANESCO for those who don't know. TANESCO is a utility company that generates, transmits, and distributes power in Tanzania with over 5.6 million customers. Next slide, please. And we have been doing the e-cooking adoption through partnerships, innovation, and public engagements to advance clean energy and also to ensure that we protect the environment and improve lives. To give a little bit of the background in terms of some of the barriers that we have been facing in Tanzania in terms of e-cooking adoptions, one being high upfront cost of appliances, As you know, these appliances are a bit of expensive and not all Tanzanians can afford, but also limited awareness and misconceptions about e-cooking cost and safety, because e-cooking and clean energy is an issue of behavioral change. And we have been experiencing some hindrances when we do awarenesses where people misconcepts about e-cooking, thinking it's very expensive, they cannot afford, and all that. But also the issue of affordability among low and middle income households, but also even the culture cooking habits, which favoring charcoal and firewood. We have been experiencing some of the customers and public at large don't want to switch to e-cooking just because they have been using charcoal and firewood for cooking. So this is also a psychological issue, which is not, you cannot change their perception in a single day, but through awareness and the campaigns, we have been able to educate them, and slowly the adoption is ongoing. Also, the limited access to efficient appliances in rural and peri-urban markets. Some of these appliances, they are not available in rural areas, and even the demand currently, because of the massive awareness that we are doing, the demand is becoming more huge vis-a-vis the supply. So this is also one among the issues that we think it acts as a barrier to the e-cooking adoption. Next slide. So why TANESCO is leading the e-cooking agenda? First of all, is for us, we are the national utilities company, and so we have extensive reach and strong customer trust, because when our customers and people hear TANESCO educating or pushing the e-cooking agenda, they automatically tend to believe us because of our presence, and also because we are public utility, so that adds people's interest, and they are becoming more attractive to listen to what TANESCO is educating, and therefore it makes it easier for the adoption, but also the adequate electricity generation capacity to support increased demand. Currently, TANESCO has an installed capacity of more than 3,900 megawatts, while the demand in terms of power is about 2,000. So you can see we have a bigger electricity generation capacity, which allow us to go wide and go bigger to the public, to educate and doing more awarenesses to adopt e-cooking because of the availability of the electricity in the country, but also opportunity to improve the grid utilization and enhance load management. Also, we are leading in the e-cooking agenda currently because of the continued investment that the company has been doing in terms of grid expansion and network reinforcement. There are a lot of ongoing projects in terms of generation, transmission, and also distribution of power. So this continued investment proves that we can still be pushing awareness in terms of e-cooking adoption, because we will be able to cover the grid network and the grid expansion. Also, we are leading for the e-cooking agenda because energy compact, as well as climate change commitments that the company has engaged ourselves into. And our main role in this cooking adoption is more in four main issues. Number one being on policy and awareness, where here we promote the national clean cooking goals and educate customers to not fear cooking with electricity. But also we are the reliable power supply company, and therefore this makes us in a position that people can trust, because we are ensuring them of electricity access for e-cooking households. And because currently Tanzania has been electrified all over the country, and access to electricity has become more wider, and therefore even customers in the rural and urban areas can access electricity for e-cooking. But also we are another role is to being innovation driver, and we have been doing this through adopting different approaches and financing solutions to enable people to access e-cooking and being able to practice cooking using electricity, because the approaches tend to help and assist them in different way as it was before when we didn't introduce these models. I'm going to speak about them later on the other slides. But also we have been partnering with and collaborating with the government through Ministry of Energy and other stakeholders and donors, as well as private sector, to come together and think of the way possible to scale up the e-cooking adoption in Tanzania. Next slide. I would like also to share with you some of the milestones that TANESCO has been able to achieve in terms of e-cooking adoption. Pilot programs implemented being number one. I will speak about the successful tested e-cooking solution that we have managed to introduce in the country. Later on, we'll see from the staff program, but as well on the OBF. Also the customer awareness and outreach. We have been implementing nationwide awareness and demonstration campaigns, including our flagship campaign of Umeme Nishati Nafuu Zaidi Jikoni, which means electricity is an affordable clean cooking solution, and also Connect to Umeme Pika kwa Umeme, which this one we are doing in alignment with the Mission 300, Mission 300, excuse me, and I will speak about it later also. But also we have been doing strategic partnership with different key partners, and here for us currently we are in collaboration with MECS. We have a project that is ongoing, but also Tateido, SESCOM, and other local appliance suppliers, which together we have been introducing different ways on how we can push the e-cooking adoption and awareness to our customers. Another milestone is on the resource mobilization. As I've said earlier on, we have managed to secure a grant funding through the TANESCO MECS e-cooking program, which is currently implemented and has been very successful. Also, we have been introducing different innovative financing model, the on-bill financing, which is currently ongoing with 500 customers. And also we have introduced salary-based payment arrangements for our staff to accelerate adoptions. Also, the policy engagement is also another milestone for us, where we have been actively contributing to the National Clean Cooking and also taking the e-cooking agenda as an institution strengthening. E-cooking is not just for the public or for the national clean cooking, but TANESCO has taken serious the e-cooking agenda and prioritizes becoming an institutional agenda. So it is even on our KPIs, on the corporate business plan, and therefore it has been easy to make our internal staff understand how important it is for e-cooking adoption, and how important it is for us as a company to increase revenue and make our customers understand. And that being a case, we have introduced even internally, we have our clean cooking champions in all of our TANESCO offices, about 32 regions, who are driving the implementation process across the organization, both within the organization and outside the organization. And for this, it has really helped us to go wider and bigger, and making the campaigns more successful. Also, our infrastructure readiness in terms of strengthening distribution, increased load from the e-cooking adoption. We have our ongoing distributional networks projects that really executed to make sure that even if we are having any increased load from the e-cooking adoption, we are not going to have any challenges. So this is also another milestone that TANESCO has been able to reach. Next slide. As I said earlier on, we have our ongoing campaign that is Umeme Nishati Nafuu Zaidi Jikoni, which is going across the country, and the key messages that we are educating to our customers is that the cooking with the electricity is cost saving, is safe, is clean, as convenience, affordability, and accessibility nationwide. And this approach is being done the whole of the country, where we're doing awareness and education, and it has been help us to create a foundation for large-scale adoption. And this one is ongoing in all of Tanzania currently, and we are partnering, as I said earlier on, with different stakeholders. Next slide. For us, as I said, TANESCO, we have introduced it to different models for e-cooking adoption. Number one was the staff adoption program, which here we had partnered with MECS, and we had launched last year, July, a subsidized e-cooking appliance lending program for staff, where they are doing the repayment of the EPC through repayment done on the payroll deduction. So far, we have managed to disperse about 4,520 EPCs to staff at the moment. And they have, and the program is ongoing very well. And by doing so, it has helped us to change our internal staff to become more ambassadors, because you cannot be preaching something which you have not yourself used and witnessed how efficient it is. So this was one of our main good strategy that we introduced, where staff really adopted, and they are now becoming ambassadors and community advocates to the public and community around them, because they are the ones now who are using e-cooking and really are witnessing how efficient it is and how affordable it is. Next slide.
Irene, so yeah, maybe we could focus, a bit more on on-bill financing. I think this is a really innovative thing that TANESCO is doing, and we need to wrap up that presentation in a couple of minutes to give some time to the next presenter. So just maybe wrap up in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so on the on-bill financing pilot for customers, we had introduced it during last year, and this all aimed to achieve the objectives from Mission 300 of new connection, as well as pushing the e-cooking adoption. And so far on the pilot design, we have distributed 500 EPC across 32 regions, and they are currently ongoing by doing the customers are repaying through electricity bills with a minimum deduction of 12,500, and this was made with the objective of reducing upfront cost barriers for customers, and also test integration with the utility billing system, and improve affordability and accessibility. So for the customer feedback and the recommendation that we have managed to get from the OBF exercise, number one was customers were recommending to introduce flexible payment options, including cash and installment, because currently it was just on an installment payment. Also expand credit scheme to include induction cookers, as the study was only focusing on the EPC. Establish automated notification upon payment completion. Also, another recommendation was customers were asking to access more than one appliance if they will want. As you know, African families, you can have more than 3 households. Also provide larger capacity appliances for households with higher cooking demand. And also they were asking for additional EPC with even inner ports, and extend eligibility to previously customers. So one among the experience that we got from the site is existing customers were also asking to do the on-bill financing model. Next. For us as a TANESCO, advantages of on-bill financing, we had managed to enable access to energy efficient and clean technologies without high upfront costs, and customers were trusting us. Also leverage TANESCO nationwide power purchase system for secure and efficient repayment. But also the OBF has improved the customer affordability when repayments are offset by energy savings, and attract private sector and development partner financing. Next slide. There were some of the risks and challenges that we got from the site when we were doing the exercise on bill financing model. Number one being regulatory and legal constraints related to cost recovery related to bills for existence. You may find you do the OBF to a customer, but what happens if you sell the house or the customer died? So there are some of the risks associated to the OBF, which we found when we were doing this exercise, but also customer misunderstanding, because some of the consumers perceive the TANESCO now like we were shifting from our main core business of providing electricity and becoming more of a selling appliances. Psychological risk that we observe when we were doing the exercise, but also financial exposure. And also we saw that there was a risk on the need for strong consumer protection measures, including clear communication, transparency, and effective dispute resolution mechanism. Next slide.
Thank you, Irene. I think we can maybe wrap up because we're out of time, unfortunately. But I think, I'm very happy that you're able to cover the on-bill financing, which is, I think, something very interesting that TANESCO is doing. Really sorry to cut you off, but I think we need to now move on to our next presenter.
Thank you.
Patrick Tutembe is a principal economist with the Electricity Regulatory Authority of Uganda, and he'll be discussing some of the e-cooking tariff that Uganda has put in place and some of the experiences with that. So I now invite Patrick to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just confirm that I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, thank you very much. Patrick Tutembe from Electricity Regulatory Authority in Uganda. Apologies, my camera is faulty, but I hope that we shall nonetheless engage fruitfully. Next slide. Yeah, the e-cooking campaign in Uganda has been a concerted effort, but this presentation focuses on the efforts that are regulator-led, that is the Electricity Regulatory Authority of Uganda. And we saw that before 2019, despite the grid access being at about 25% of the country, only about 3% of the household used electricity for cooking. And even for the 3% of the households, the cooking was rather marginal. And it was very uncommon to hear people talking about efficient cooking appliances and all people looking for electric cooking appliances, and electricity was perceived as expensive. And at that time, there was no evidence. It was more of myth than evidence supported on how the electric cooking, the cost of electric cooking compared to the cost of cooking using the most common sources of energy, and which was mainly charcoal for urban-based households and LPG, and then other forms of biomass like firewood. Next slide. So in 2019, the Electricity Regulatory Authority worked with the utility, the utility at the time, to undertake a study that established what would be the cost comparison between biomass and electricity for cooking. And this mainly focused on educational and health institutions. So the target was to, first of all, demystify electric cooking cost barrier for electric cooking, and also establish if the cost of energy, if a customer was to be made whole from a cost of energy perspective, what is the price of electricity that would be reasonable to compare with the cost that the customer was spending on other sources of energy. We realized that in educational institutions, schools in particular, depended greatly on firewood for cooking, and the objective was to see whether we can facilitate them to transition from biomass, use of biomass to electric cooking. And this study that was undertaken by UMEME at that time, the distribution utility, informed Uganda's first institutional e-cooking pilot, and from the year 2020 in January, in partnership with the UNDP, the Electricity Regulatory Authority facilitated a retrofitting of a child nutrition cooking facility at Uganda's main national referral hospital, Mulago, from biomass to electric cooking with the LPG backup. And that we saw that hospital kitchen transit completely from that time till now. Fast forward, next slide. Fast forward into 2022, there was a presidential pronouncement that restricted the charcoal supply to the Kampala main business district from mainly parts of the northern Uganda. And at that point, there was need for ERA, or the Electricity Regulatory Authority, to take leadership in suggesting alternatives for households. And it was at that point that the Electricity Regulatory Authority announced what we call the e-cooking tariff. And the objective of the e-cooking tariff was to shift cooking load from biomass to electricity without necessarily having households to pay more for cooking using electricity than they would have been paying for using the other alternative sources of energy. And this tariff was explicitly designed around efficient appliance use. And in the next slide, we are going to see what are the parameters of this e-cooking tariff. So the e-cooking tariff is a package of electricity units, 70 units. And because we're not able to have data and metering systems that could alienate electricity for cooking from the electricity used for other uses, then we made studies and found that based on the average consumption of a domestic household and the most common uses of electricity, Then for us to keep the electricity supply industry rather financially sustainable, then we could not cross-subsidize every unit of electricity, but rather we estimated that first of all, when we were starting, it was not possible that we could target to have every person, every consumer or every domestic consumer cook using electricity, because we know that there are households who will only need on electricity for lighting, or who will barely be able to pay for electricity for lighting, even when we give electricity at a lifeline rate. So the intention then was to ensure that to maintain financial sustainability, we target cross-subsidizing from the 81st unit, and we cross-subsidize 70 units. So it means that from the 80th unit to 81st unit to the 150th unit in a month, those units would qualify for a lower tariff, which is about 11 US cents per kilowatt hour, compared to US cents 20 for every kilowatt hour that is consumed for the rest of the domestic usage. Important to note at this point that in addition to these tariffs that we talk about, every domestic customer in Uganda qualifies for 15 units every month at about US cents, at about 6.5 US cents for Lifeline. Now, the major driver of this initiative was to ensure that we signal, as the body mandated to approve tariffs, we signal to the rest of the customers that it is our intention to ensure that electric cooking is affordable. Next slide. And following that initiative, then, and also the communication efforts surrounding the e-cooking tariff, then we had the market very interested in electric cooking. And at that point, it also coincided with the time when the modern energy cleaning services had supported Uganda's efforts and produced an e-cookbook for Uganda, which has since been updated, I think last year in 2024. And this e-cookbook validated local dishes. It indicated that e-cooking can actually be able can actually prepare almost all local dishes. This e-cookbook also documented the comparative cost of preparing these dishes using biomass, LPG, then the conventional electric cooking, and also, most importantly, emphasized the cost differences and cost savings of efficient e-cooking using electric pressure cookers. And we saw further efforts by MECS collaborating with the utility that we regulate to pilot distribution of electric pressure cookers on the by the main utility. And since then, we have seen an unlocking of EPC supply chains nationally, with so many consumer associations, clean cooking association, and the renewable energy associations taking part and participating in the supply of electric pressure cookers, targeting both the customers that have since been aware, but also the customers riding on the cost savings that come with the use of electric pressure cookers. Next. Back one slide. Yeah, and since then there has been a financing momentum and delivery through these supply chains that we have talked about. And we have seen results-based financing programs spearheaded by many partners of government, including the SNV. This is, I think, a bilateral organization by the Norwegians. Then GIZ, this is for the German. Then UK Aid and World Bank. We have also seen institutional e-cooking efforts supported by UK Aid, whereby we have currently a program that is supporting conversion of cooking units in about 140 schools countrywide into e-cooking, and all these are pilot efforts to help generate momentum. And we also have the African Development Bank Uganda Biogas and E-Cooking Project that is launching next month, that will also support results-based financing mechanism or efforts for distribution of electric pressure cookers. And also we have another project that is coming under the World Bank ARCENT. And also there is a project expected under the Green Climate Finance Pipeline. All these and many other efforts are coming to ensure that the e-cooking agenda is well supported. And also to say that, SNV is Netherlands, I beg your pardon. The Uganda has also developed an e-cooking strategy, and this e-cooking strategy clearly lays out the different stakeholder initiatives that are required to roll out electric cooking countrywide. Next slide. Of course, there are some challenges that have to be overcome if e-cooking is to be mainstreamed nationally. One is reliability of electricity supply, which is very critical for sustained e-cooking adoption, especially when it comes to institutions that have a lot of e-cooking loads, and also which have high risks of power cuts, especially if power is to go off during the time when students are supposed to be eating. Then it means that the networks have to be reinforced. And as a regulator, we prioritize least cost reinforcements for shared assets. And also we look forward to market activation for equipment financing. So whereas we have these projects that are undertaking retrofitting of institutions from biomass-based cooking to e-cooking, we intend to support market activation to see that just like momentum has been gathered to support electric pressure cookers for domestic e-cooking, we also intend to see an activation of the market, especially in equipment financing for institutional electric cooking. Then also, as a regulator, our focus is to ensure that any required support, especially regulatory support, from the perspective of making energy, electric energy more competitive than any other form of energy, to support e-cooking. As a regulator, we are ready to support every effort to ensure that electricity becomes the least expensive on all forms of energy that are used for cooking. Next.
Patrick, we have some questions, so I encourage you to maybe give us some final remarks so we can leave some time for Q&A. I know you're probably wrapping up, but yeah, we have a couple of questions as well, and we'd like to leave some time for that. Thank you.
Okay, in line with the looking ahead, there is a national carbon finance framework that's being designed specifically targeting electric cooking. And also there is a need to lower upfront appliance costs, and also design financing mechanisms to ensure that appliances are made available. And we hope that the National Carbon Finance Framework will look into how the benefits from carbon reduction and emission reductions can be used to help make this equipment affordable. ERA is committed to make e-cooking the most cost-effective option, and this will be driven by tariffs, trust, and also improvement of power reliability, and also data systems that will help in identifying areas that need reinforcement, and also reliability tracking in general. I want to thank you, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Patrick. That's a very rich, very interesting, and innovative approach that the measures that ERA has taken is truly commendable. There is, I believe, a question that is aimed your presentation. It's from an unknown, unverified user, but they ask, how was the 70 kilowatt hour per month and the threshold of 81st unit arrived at? And it says, who foots the bill of the subsidy? If you could maybe elaborate a little bit on that. And then we encourage other people to either post, it would probably be easier if you posted the question in the meeting chat, and then I can read them as they come.
Thank you very much. Maybe to say that given the starting point was that we would have been able to allow all units used for cooking to be cross-subsidized, but given the technology challenge, then we undertook data mining of the billing system and identified the average consumption of a domestic customer. Two, also relied on information available to understand what uses was an average domestic consumer using electricity for. And based on that, we also hypothesized that there are uses of electricity that have to be in the base load of a customer before they start cooking. For example, it was our expectation that a customer is more likely to first achieve ironing of their clothes and lighting and charging of telephone before they eventually use the electricity for cooking. And all that effort was because we could not cross-subsidize all the electricity that the domestic customer was using. So we had to, and yet we wanted to send a signal that we want people to move from charcoal and not use the cost of electricity as an excuse for not cooking using electricity. So it was mainly a data mining effort, and the source of the cross subsidy is that the rest of the domestic customers contribute this cross subsidy. And the reason why that is justified is because eventually when we promote electric cooking, when we reduce carbon emissions, we end up achieving benefits that go to the rest of the customers. And as a country, there are so many benefits, including, of course, also the electricity system, which will have an increased demand. Not forgetting that one of the main strategies in the National Development Plan and the long-term vision of the country is to increase the per capita consumption, which, of course, will benefit a lot from increasing the consumption of households and moving all households, especially those that have some money that is being spent on energy for cooking, being shifted from biomass and carbon based fuels to clean cooking and specifically electric cooking. I hope I've been able to respond to the questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick. I see a question from Dean Cooper, and Ed has partially answered that in the chat. It's related to, options for off-grid and, how to integrate e-cooking with off-grid solar and with mini grids. And then there's a question directed to TANESCO on inclusion of mini grids, but I believe that's in the purview of mini grid developers who are in the private sector and operate independently of TANESCO. So maybe we can move on to the next question from Phil Larocco, who's asking if there are any tools and models specifically for local energy enterprises to enter the electric cooking market. So maybe Matt can take that one.
Yeah, thanks. I'm struggling at the minute to think exactly what to suggest because it's quite a broad question. I mean, I think any of the tools and models that I talked about would be, perfectly suitable for small energy enterprises to try and understand the market that they wanted to enter. But I don't think they're particularly tailored to the needs of smaller enterprises. Perhaps this is something to think about more and take offline. I'd be very happy to talk to Phil separately to this to try and understand the needs better. Unless any colleagues have got things to add.
I believe the contact information was included in the presentations. If not, then we can connect you and Phil so you can continue that conversation. Lucy's asking about the e-cooking. That e-cooking is a good solution, but perhaps not all the foods can be cooked using an e-cooker. So understanding how the different cooking solutions and the stacking with LPG perhaps comes at play here, and how does LPG compare to e-cooking? Are they complementary solutions, and if so, how should they be promoted together, or in which priority order? And I believe Ed is the best person to answer this one.
I was going to quit, and I also see Samson's piece on here as well. We don't have a lot of time to discuss this, but suffice it to say that these are all issues that we have looked at in detail. There's some studies on the MECS website that range from the issues with regard to cooking entirely using electricity, and then others where we look at the adoption of electric cooking for specific components of the cooking stack. And I think the point about cultural, I think, applicability is extremely well made. But actually, it's interesting that I think that the flexibility of electric cooking can quite often be underestimated. There was the question around ugali. Certainly in Kenya, with several of the different e-cooking hubs that have been established in the different counties around Kenya, one of the things that they've done in the e-cooking demonstrations is showing how ugali can be cooked effectively using different types of electric cooking appliances, and they've done taste tests that are done blind with ugali that's been produced using more traditional methods, and there's been the vast majority of those taste tests have found that either the people that have been involved in those taste tests have opted for the electric cooked ugali, or there is no difference. So it's been quite interesting that the assumption going into it had been that there was maybe a preference for cooking that was, or ugali that had been cooked utilizing smoke, or where there was smoke there. But actually, in reality, that's not something that we found from the research that we've conducted.
Great, thank you so much, Ed. So I think that covers Samson's question, and this is to give some context. This is coming from studies that MECS has been running. They're called e-cookbooks, where they've tested extensively the cooking methods and the menus that a lot of these communities are using to see how well they perform when using efficient electric cooking appliances, both in terms of the energy consumption and the energy savings there, but also on the on the satisfaction of the users with the results, including the taste of the food and the functionality of the appliances and so on. There's one more question that is asking about the Tanzanian model of on-bill financing versus the Ugandan model of subsidized electricity, and which model has been more effective in terms of adoption and which is sustainable in the long run. I think that's it's a difficult question to answer. I think, just to put it in context, I think, these initiatives are not kind of mutually exclusive, but it also just depends, I think, on the on where the leverages are in the particular country, and what the institutions can and cannot do. They have limitations as well, and they're looking at many different aspects, including the whether the affordability is a main barrier, and if so, is it flexible payment option, or is it an actual affordability barrier? And if so, then can the utilities or the regulator do something to enable that? And if so, what they can do. And in this case, I think the two models that were highlighted, I think they're complementary in a way, but they're both innovative in that, as far as we know, they're one of the first countries to have trialed this. I think we only have a few minutes left, so if there are any more questions, maybe just communicate via chat, and you can get each other's information so you can continue the conversation, and I'll just try to just in a couple of minutes give some wrap-up remarks, and with that, I think we can close today's session. So I wanted to thank all the speakers that today, highlighted transition to electric cooking is, multi-pronged, requires an deep understanding of the cooking practices and the benefits, the socioeconomic impacts, careful planning and keeping up with advancements in technology, and where there's buy-in and countries have taken concrete measures to enable this transition via addressing affordability barriers, such as, innovative tariff design, on-bill financing, supporting the introduction of quality assured, efficient appliances in the market, leveraging financing from electrification fund, carbon finance, to reduce appliance costs and prioritize service quality. The modeling work, which is extremely important, that is considering, different demand for e-cooking as part of electrification planning, and all those different models are gaining traction and are available to policymakers, practitioners to use. And most importantly, of course, the coordination among the different institutions like regulatory authorities, utilities, the private sector such as, mini-grid developers and off-grid solar companies, as well as international partners that have development programs in those countries. With that said, challenges do remain. I think we didn't maybe cover enough about the reliability of electricity, which is, I think, a very important building block when it comes to, especially for grid-connected electric cooking. So, what can we do more about grid reinforcements and strengthening of those networks, upgrading of transformers, to deal with those concurrent loads that will be so important. More sensitization is probably needed, removing more affordability barriers. I think we heard from Uganda, Tanzania, and also the case of Kenya and how they've laid the groundwork for a more sustainable and efficient future for e-cooking. And that concerted effort from different institutions in the country, combined with a dynamic private sector and donor programs, can take advantage of these opportunities to transform how people cook. So I think with that, we'll wrap up today's session, and we want to thank very much the speakers for taking the time to share with us part of their work, and thanks to everyone in attendance for joining, and we will welcome you in the new in the next webinar, and those details will be coming in shortly. So with that, thank you, and have a wonderful day.